The saliva hits my bechamel sauce in slow motion. I watch it slide down the perfectly seared crust of my filet Wellington, leaving a glistening trail through the mushroom duxelles that took me 3 hours to prepare. For a moment, the entire dining room freezes. The crystal chandelier above us, the one Richard and I bought in Vienna on our 20th anniversary, casts prismatic light across the mahogany table, illuminating this single act of desecration like it's happening on a stage. Tatiana sits back in her chair, chest heaving, mascara slightly smudged at the corners of her eyes, from what I now recognize as manufactured tears. My son Alistair is on his feet so fast his chair scrapes against the hardwood floor with a screech that makes me wince, but not as much as what comes out of his mouth next. "Mom, apologize to my wife. Right now." His voice is shaking, but there's steel underneath. Steel I don't recognize. Steel that wasn't there 3 years ago, before this woman sank her perfectly manicured claws into my boy. I set down my fork with deliberate care. My hands aren't shaking. They should be. My entire world is tilting on its axis. But 32 years of boardroom negotiations have taught me that the moment you show weakness is the moment you lose everything. And I haven't lost yet. Apologize? I keep my voice level, almost curious. For what, exactly? For what? Alistair's face is red now, a vein pulsing at his temple that reminds me so viscerally of his father that my chest tightens. You've been attacking Tatiana all night. The comments about her clothes, about her career, about how she chose to arrive late. I arrived 40 minutes late because of traffic, Tatiana interjects, her voice wavering in that little girl way she does so well. I already explained that. I don't look at her. I keep my eyes on my son. This man I grew inside my body. This child I nursed through every nightmare and every skinned knee, every heartbreak and every triumph. The boy who used to crawl into bed between Richard and me during thunderstorms, who would hold my hand at the grocery store until he was almost too old for it, who told me at 15 that I was his hero because I built a company from nothing while still making him homemade lunches every single day. That boy is gone. Standing in his place is someone I barely recognize. I mentioned that your wife's Louboutins are beautiful, I say carefully. I asked about her influencer work with genuine interest. And when she arrived at 7:40, instead of 7 as we agreed, I simply noted that the Wellington would be overcooked if we waited any longer. I pause. These are facts, Alistair, not attacks. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. He's pacing now, running his hands through his dark hair the way he's done since he was a toddler. That tone, that look, you've never accepted Tatiana. From day one, you've treated her like she's not good enough for this family. The words land like physical blows, because there's truth in them, even if he doesn't understand why. I haven't accepted Tatiana Monroe, born Tatiana Kowalski, though he doesn't know that yet, because every instinct I've honed over 57 years of reading people, building businesses, and protecting what I love has been screaming at me since the moment she smiled at my son at that charity gala 2.5 years ago. But how do you tell your adult son that his wife is a liar without sounding like a jealous mother-in-law? How do you warn him that the woman he married in that fairy tale wedding at the Greenwich Country Club, the wedding I paid for, all $180,000 of it, is exactly the kind of predator I spent my career learning to spot? You can't. So you investigate, you document, you wait. And tonight, finally, you stop waiting. This dinner was supposed to honor your father, I say quietly. 3 years ago today, Richard died in my arms in our bedroom upstairs. 3 years, Alistair. And every year since, we've gathered on this day to remember him, to share his favorite meal, to keep his memory alive in this house he loved so much. My voice cracked slightly on that last word, and I let it. This isn't strategy. This is genuine grief for the man I loved for 34 years. Your wife just spat in my food during your father's memorial dinner. Something flickers across Alistair's face. Uncertainty, maybe, or memory, of his father, of the man who taught him to ride a bike and throw a baseball and treat women with respect. But Tatiana is faster. I did it because you called me a gold digger. She's standing now too, and real tears, or something close enough, are streaming down her face. You said I married Alistair for his money, that I'm clearly not from our world, that I don't understand old money values. You said it right to my face. I said no such thing. I'm genuinely confused now. Tatiana, I haven't. You did. 10 minutes ago, when Alistair was in the kitchen getting more wine. Her voice rises to a near shriek. You looked me right in the eye and said I was transparently obvious and that you knew exactly what I was. This is masterful. I have to give her credit. In the 4 months since I hired Thaddeus Lancaster to investigate her, I've read detailed reports of her manipulation tactics, but seeing them deployed in real time is almost artistic. She's creating a private conversation that never happened, knowing Alistair will have to choose who to believe, his mother or his wife, and I can see from his face exactly who he's choosing. Mom. He's not yelling anymore. Somehow, this quiet disappointment is worse. Is that true? Did you say that to her? No, Alistair. I absolutely did not. She's lying, Tatiana sobs. She's been like this for 2 years, undermining me, criticizing everything I do, making me feel like I'll never be good enough for the precious Fairchild family. She turns to my son, grabbing his hands. I've tried so hard, baby. I've tried to make her like me, to prove I love you, but nothing works. She hates me. She'll always hate me. I watch my son fold. It happens in stages. His shoulders dropping, his jaw unclenching, his entire body turning toward his wife in protection mode. He pulls her into his arms, and she buries her face in his shoulder, her entire body shaking with sobs that I note, with detached fascination, produce no actual tears. You need to leave. Alistair's voice is muffled against Tatiana's hair, but the words are clear enough. I can't do this anymore, Mom. The tension, the passive aggression, the way you undermine my marriage every chance you get. I have never— Enough! He's shouting again, and Tatiana flinches dramatically in his arms. I'm 32 years old. I'm a grown man with a wife and a career and a life that doesn't revolve around you anymore. And if you can't respect my marriage, if you can't treat Tatiana with basic human decency, then you need to leave this house. This house. The house I bought for him and his new bride as a wedding present. The 4-bedroom colonial in Old Greenwich with the water views and the mature gardens, worth $2.3 million at current market rates. The house where I've spent countless evenings over the past 2 years, trying to maintain connection with my only child while watching him slowly disappear into this woman's web. Mom, please. His voice breaks. Just apologize to Tatiana. Tell her you didn't mean it. We can work through this, but you have to meet us halfway. Us. When did my son become an us that didn't include me? I look at Tatiana. She's watching me over Alistair's shoulder with those dark eyes, and for just a fraction of a second, her expression shifts. The tears stop, the trembling stills, and she smiles, a tiny, triumphant curve of lips that says she knows she's won. That smile costs her everything. No, I say simply. Alistair pulls back from Tatiana, staring at me like I've grown a second head. What? I'm not apologizing. I fold my napkin carefully and place it beside my ruined plate. Because I didn't do what she's accusing me of doing. And I won't apologize for crimes I didn't commit just to keep the peace. Then you need to leave. His voice is hollow. Mom, I'm serious. If you can't apologize, if you can't even try to fix this, then I'm asking you to leave my house, right now. The ultimatum hangs in the air between us like smoke. My son, my baby, my miracle, the boy I wanted for 9 years before he finally came, the child I nearly died bringing into this world, is choosing her over me. I can see it in his eyes. He's already chosen. And still, I smile. It's not a big smile. Not triumphant or smug or any of the things Tatiana will later claim in the character assassination posts she's already drafted for her 340,000 Instagram followers. It's the smile of someone who spent 4 months playing chess while everyone else played checkers. The smile of someone who knows exactly what's about to walk through that door. You say that because you don't know the truth, Alistair. My voice is soft, almost gentle, and that gentleness seems to unsettle him more than any argument could. He opens his mouth, probably to order me out again, probably to say something he'll regret for the rest of his life, when we all hear it. The unmistakable sound of a key turning in the front door lock. All 3 of us freeze. Alistair looks confused. He's not expecting anyone. Tatiana's face goes absolutely white under her contouring, and I know she recognizes what this means even before the door swings open. Footsteps in the foyer, expensive leather shoes on marble tile. Then Thaddeus Lancaster appears in the dining room doorway, and despite everything, despite the ruined dinner and my son's betrayal and the pain crushing my chest, I feel something very close to relief. Thaddeus has been Richard's best friend since their Harvard days, my personal attorney for the past 15 years, and the only person besides me who knows every detail of what we're about to do. He's wearing his courtroom suit, navy Tom Ford, crisp white shirt, burgundy tie, and carrying his leather briefcase. The briefcase that contains 4 months of investigation, documentation, and evidence that will blow Tatiana's carefully constructed world into pieces so small she'll never put them back together. "Good evening," Thaddeus says, his deep voice carrying that particular tone he uses when he's about to destroy someone legally. I apologize for the interruption. He's not looking at Alistair or me. His eyes are locked on Tatiana, and I watch her recognize what's coming. Her face cycles through expressions faster than I can track: confusion, recognition, fear, calculation, and finally, pure hatred directed straight at me. "What's going on?" Alistair looks between us, completely lost. "Thaddeus, why are you here? How did you—" "I gave him a key months ago," I say calmly, not taking my eyes off Tatiana. "For exactly this reason." "What reason? Mom, what the hell is happening?" Thaddeus sets his briefcase on the sideboard and opens it with 2 precise clicks. "Your mother asked me to conduct a private investigation into certain irregularities she noticed regarding your wife." He pulls out a manila folder, thick with documents. Irregularities that, upon investigation, revealed a pattern of fraud, deception, and criminal activity that I believe you need to know about. The word criminal hits the room like a grenade. Alistair actually laughs, a short, disbelieving sound. "This is insane. You investigated my wife? Mom, are you serious right now?" "Deadly serious." I stand, walking around the table toward my son. 4 months ago, I sat in Thaddeus's office and cried for the first time since your father's funeral. Not because I'm a jealous mother-in-law, not because I can't let go of my baby boy, but because I watched you change, Alistair. I watched you become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who canceled our lunch dates. Someone who stopped calling just to chat. Someone who looked exhausted every time I saw him, with circles under his eyes and tension in his shoulders that you tried to hide but I could see. Because I'm your mother, and I've been reading your face since before you were born. We got busy. That's normal when you're married. It's not normal to withdraw $15,000 from your joint account for household expenses that never appear in your house," Thaddeus says flatly, pulling out a bank statement. "It's not normal to have $180,000 in secret debts your spouse doesn't know about. And it's certainly not normal to consult with a divorce attorney about asset division while you're still pretending to be happily married." The silence that follows could suffocate. 4 months ago, I sat in Thaddeus Lancaster's corner office overlooking Madison Avenue and cried into a $1,000 handkerchief that had belonged to Richard. The irony wasn't lost on me. Arabella Fairchild, who'd built a $42 million consulting empire from nothing, who'd negotiated with Fortune 500 CEOs without blinking, who'd buried her husband with dry eyes and perfect posture because someone had to be strong for Alistair, was falling apart over lukewarm coffee and the slow, terrible realization that I was losing my son. "He canceled lunch again," I told Thaddeus, my voice breaking on the word again. "That's 3 times in 2 months. And when I called him, she answered his phone. Said he was in the shower but would call me back. He never did." Thaddeus didn't offer me the usual platitudes. We'd known each other too long for that. He'd been at my wedding, had held Alistair when he was hours old, had stood beside me at Richard's grave when my legs nearly gave out. He knew when I was overreacting, and he knew when my instincts were screaming for good reason. "Tell me what you've observed," he said, pulling out a legal pad. "Always the lawyer, even in friendship." So I told him. Not the big things. There weren't any big things yet, which was part of what made it so insidious. Just small shifts. The way Alistair had stopped mentioning his work projects, which he'd always loved sharing with me. The way he'd become vague about his schedule, his plans, his life. The way he'd started using phrases that didn't sound like him, We need boundaries. You're being intrusive. Tatiana feels uncomfortable when you just drop by. I hadn't just dropped by. I'd called first, like I always did. But suddenly, my weekly visits to bring him his favorite lemon bars, the ones I'd been making since he was 8 years old, were unannounced intrusions and boundary violations. She's isolating him, I said, the words tasting like poison. Slowly, carefully, but that's what she's doing. And he doesn't see it because he's in love with who he thinks she is. Thaddeus tapped his pen against the legal pad. What do you actually know about Tatiana? That's when I realized how little I knew, how little any of us knew. Alastair had met her at a charity gala in Manhattan 18 months before their wedding. She was there as someone's plus one, I never found out whose, wearing a dress that probably cost 3 months of most people's rent. She'd introduced herself as Tatiana Monroe, social media influencer and lifestyle consultant, and she'd been charming, magnetic even. The kind of woman who lights up a room and makes everyone feel like they're the only person she's talking to. She'd told us she was from Connecticut originally, had gone to college in Boston, and had built her following by sharing authentic moments of everyday luxury. Her Instagram showed a life of designer clothes, expensive restaurants, private yoga sessions, and inspirational quotes about manifesting abundance. 340,000 people followed her religiously. Did you ever verify any of that? Thaddeus asked. I hadn't. Why would I? My son was 30 years old, a successful architect, perfectly capable of vetting his own romantic partners. And she'd been so convincing, so polished, so seemingly perfect for him. She laughed at his jokes, asked intelligent questions about his work, and looked at him like he'd hung the moon. The wedding had been beautiful. Tatiana's family was small, just her mother, who was quiet and seemed overwhelmed by the whole affair. No father, few friends. I'm a private person, Tatiana had explained. I prefer quality over quantity in relationships. It had seemed reasonable at the time. Now, in Thaddeus's office, it seemed like a red flag the size of Connecticut. I want you to investigate her, I said, the words feeling simultaneously crazy and absolutely necessary. Bank records, background check, whatever you can legally access. I need to know who my son married. Thaddeus didn't argue. Didn't tell me I was being paranoid or overprotective. He just nodded and made notes, and 2 weeks later, he called me back into his office with a folder that made my blood run cold. Tatiana Monroe didn't exist before 3 years ago. The name was real. She'd legally changed it from Tatiana Kowalski when she was 26, but everything else was fabricated. She hadn't gone to college in Boston. She'd dropped out of community college in Ohio after 1 semester. She wasn't from Connecticut. She'd grown up in a lower-middle-class neighborhood in Cleveland with an absent father and a mother who worked 3 jobs. None of that would have mattered to me. I didn't care about her background or her family's financial situation. What I cared about was the lying and the debt. Tatiana had accumulated $180,000 in debts over the past 4 years. Credit cards maxed out buying designer clothes and accessories to photograph for Instagram. Personal loans taken from predatory lenders at 28% interest. And, this was the part that made my stomach turn, $95,000 in gambling debts from online casinos and sports betting sites. She has a problem, Thaddeus said, sliding another document across his desk. A serious one. And she's been using Alastair's money to service the minimum payments while the principal keeps growing. I thought about the $15,000 Alastair had mentioned withdrawing for renovations to their guest bathroom. The bathroom that, when I'd visited, looked exactly the same as it had 6 months earlier. But the worst was still coming. Thaddeus showed me printed screenshots from Tatiana's private messages with her girlfriends, messages the investigator had obtained through methods I decided not to ask about too closely. In them, she referred to my son as her golden ticket and retirement plan. She joked about playing the long game and securing the bag before the old lady changes her will. The old lady. That was me. There were messages about her strategy for getting pregnant as quickly as possible to lock down child support if things went south. Messages about which of Alastair's properties would be most valuable in a divorce. Messages where she laughed with her friends about my son's work stories, calling him boring but bankable and sweet but not exactly exciting in bed. I'd read those messages in Thaddeus's office with my hand pressed against my mouth, trying not to vomit. This woman, this stranger who'd wormed her way into my family, had never loved my son. She'd never even liked him. He was a transaction to her, a means to an end. "There's more," Thaddeus said quietly, and I didn't think I could handle more, but he showed me anyway. 3 weeks before our dinner, before tonight, Tatiana had met with a divorce attorney. Not just any divorce attorney, but one of the most aggressive in Connecticut, known for maximizing settlements for spurned spouses. The consultation notes, which Thaddeus had obtained through his own network of legal contacts, showed that Tatiana had been planning her exit strategy. She was going to wait until she'd been married for 2 years, just long enough to establish a credible claim to marital assets, and then create a situation that would paint her as the victim. Emotional abuse, she'd told the lawyer. A toxic mother-in-law who made her life hell. A husband who chose his mother over his wife repeatedly. She'd document everything, post it on social media to her hundreds of thousands of followers, and position herself as the brave woman escaping a controlling family. The payout she was hoping for? Half of the house I'd bought them, plus spousal support of $10,000 a month for at least 3 years. All told, she expected to walk away with about $2 million from a 2-year marriage to a man she'd never loved. "We need to stop this," I'd said, my hands shaking with rage. "We need to tell Alistair right now." "He won't believe you," Thaddeus said gently. "He's in love with her. If you show him this evidence before he's ready to see it, he'll think you fabricated it. He'll think you hired someone to create fake messages and false documents because you can't stand that he got married. And Tatiana will use that to drive the wedge even deeper. So what do I do? Just watch her destroy my son?" "We wait," Thaddeus said. "We watch. We document. And we wait for her to show her true colors in a way that Alistair can't deny or explain away. She's getting desperate. The gambling debts are compounding, and her creditors are starting to pressure her. Desperate people make mistakes, and when she makes hers, we'll be ready." So I'd waited. 4 months of watching my son drift further away. 4 months of biting my tongue during dinners where Tatiana made subtle digs at me that Alistair never seemed to notice. 4 months of documenting every lie, every manipulation, every red flag, building our case like Thaddeus was preparing for trial. Because that's what this was, really. A trial. And my son was both the prize and the jury. The plan had been to confront her tonight during the memorial dinner for Richard. I'd known Tatiana would act out. She always did when she thought I was getting too much of Alistair's attention. I'd known she'd create some kind of scene, some kind of situation that would force Alistair to choose sides. What I hadn't anticipated was the spit in my plate, the sheer brazenness of it. But maybe that was better. Maybe the mask slipping so dramatically, so undeniably, would make what came next easier for my son to accept. Maybe seeing her true face in high definition would hurt less than watching it emerge slowly over months or years. Or maybe I was just desperate for this nightmare to be over, for my son to be free, for our family to heal from the infection that Tatiana Kowalski-Monroe had introduced into our bloodstream. Standing in that dining room with Thaddeus in the doorway and Alistair's face cycling through confusion and fear and the first glimmers of doubt, I thought about all those afternoons in Thaddeus's office, all those documents and bank statements and printed messages, all that evidence of betrayal that I'd carried alone for 4 months, protecting my son from a truth he wasn't ready to face. Tonight, he'd be ready, whether he wanted to be or not. Tonight, the trial would reach its verdict. Alistair's hand is gripping the back of his chair so hard his knuckles have gone white. He's staring at the bank statement in Thaddeus's hand like it's written in a language he doesn't understand. Which in a way it is. The language of betrayal, of carefully constructed lies, of a life built on sand. "That's not possible," he says finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tatiana doesn't have any debts. We talked about finances before we got married. She told me she had some student loans, maybe $20,000, but we paid those off last year." "You paid off $20,000 in fabricated student loan debt," Thaddeus corrects, his lawyer voice in full effect now. Calm, precise, devastating. The money went into her personal account and from there to various creditors, none of whom were educational institutions. I watch my son process this, Watch the wheels turning behind his eyes. He's an architect. He thinks in structures, in foundations, in load-bearing walls. And right now, I can see him realizing that the structure of his marriage has no foundation at all. Tatiana hasn't moved from her spot near the window. She's frozen there, her face still pale, but I can see her mind working overtime. She's trying to figure out her play, trying to calculate which strategy will work best. Deny everything? Break down crying? Go on the offensive? I've spent 4 months studying her patterns, and I know she's running through her entire playbook right now. This is insane, she says finally, and she chooses offense. Smart girl. Defense would be an admission of having something to defend against. You hired a private investigator to spy on me. You violated my privacy, probably broke about 12 laws, and now you're presenting illegally obtained information as if it means something? Nothing we obtained was illegal, Thaddeus says mildly. Bank records for joint accounts that Alistair is a signatory on. Public records searches. Social media posts you made publicly available. Information freely given by creditors when we posed as debt consolidation consultants. All perfectly legal. Debt consolidation. Alistair's voice cracks. What creditors? Tatiana, what is he talking about? She turns to him, and I have to admire the performance. Her eyes fill with tears. Real ones this time, I think, because fear produces genuine physiological responses, and her voice shakes with what could be mistaken for wounded innocence. Baby, this is exactly what I was trying to protect you from. Yes, I have some debt. Yes, I should have told you. But I was ashamed, okay? I was embarrassed that I wasn't as financially stable as your family, that I couldn't just write a check for everything like your mother does. I was trying to handle it myself, trying not to burden you with my problems. It's a good pivot. She's taking the facts, which she can't deny now that Thaddeus has documentation, and reframing them as a minor secret kept out of love, not a major deception kept out of greed. Alistair wants to believe her. I can see it in every line of his body. He wants this to be a misunderstanding, a small lie that can be forgiven because the alternative is too devastating to contemplate. How much debt? He asks quietly. Tatiana hesitates just a moment too long. Maybe 60,000? I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to check. $180,000, Thaddeus interrupts, pulling out another document. As of last week, approximately 95,000 in gambling debts, 60,000 in credit card debt, and 25,000 in personal loans from subprime lenders charging interest rates between 23 and 31%. The number lands like a physical blow. Alistair actually staggers back a step. Gambling. His voice is strangled. You told me you went to the casino with your girlfriends maybe twice a year for fun. You said you never bet more than $100. I don't. That's not. Tatiana's composure is cracking now. Those numbers are wrong. They have to be wrong. I don't have gambling debts. I don't even like gambling. You have accounts with 7 different online casinos, Thaddeus says, flipping through his folder with the calm efficiency of someone presenting evidence in court. DraftKings, BetMGM, FanDuel, Caesars, among others. You also have accounts with 3 offshore sports betting sites. The deposits to these accounts over the past 18 months total $137,000. The withdrawals total $42,000. That's a net loss of $95,000. The silence in the room is suffocating. I want to go to my son, to put my arms around him, but I know I can't. Not yet. He needs to hear this without feeling like I'm influencing him, without Tatiana being able to claim I'm manipulating the situation. Where did the money come from? Alistair asks, and his voice sounds dead. The $137,000. Where did it come from? I see Tatiana realize she's trapped. She can't claim she earned it. Her influencer income is maybe $30,000 a year before taxes, and Alistair knows this. She can't claim she had savings. She supposedly came into the marriage with minimal assets, which leaves only one answer. From our joint account, Thaddeus says when she doesn't answer. Withdrawn in increments small enough not to trigger automatic alerts. 2,000 here, 3,000 there, occasionally 5,000 for what was listed as business expenses or family emergency or dental work. Over 18 months it adds up. You stole from me. Alistair isn't asking. He's just stating a fact, testing how it sounds out loud. For 18 months, you've been stealing from our joint account to feed a gambling addiction. It's not stealing when it's a joint account. Tatiana's voice rises, defensive now. That money belonged to both of us, and it wasn't an addiction. I made some bad bets, okay? I thought I could win it back. I thought if I could just hit one big win, I could pay everything off and you'd never have to know. The classic gambler's fallacy, Thaddeus observes. Chase the losses until there's nothing left to chase them with. Alistair sinks into his chair, the fight draining out of him. He looks 10 years older than he did an hour ago. What else? He asks dully, looking at Thaddeus. What else don't I know? Don't do this, Tatiana says, her voice taking on a pleading quality that might have worked an hour ago, but now just sounds manipulative. Baby, don't let them poison you against me. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I should have told you about the debt, but I love you. Everything I did because I was scared of losing you. You met with a divorce attorney 3 weeks ago, I say, speaking for the first time in several minutes. My voice is steady, factual. Morgan Whitfield, one of the most aggressive divorce lawyers in Connecticut. You asked her how much you could expect to receive if you divorced Alistair after 2 years of marriage. Tatiana's face goes absolutely blank. For a moment, she looks like a computer that's just crashed, all her carefully maintained expressions wiped clean. Then the rage comes, pure and undisguised. You fucking bitch, she hisses at me, and the venom in her voice is so raw that even Alistair flinches. You couldn't stand that he chose me. You couldn't stand that he built a life that didn't revolve around you. So you hired people to dig into my private life, to violate my privacy, to twist everything into the worst possible interpretation. Did you or did you not meet with Morgan Whitfield on November 8th? Thaddeus asks calmly. I was exploring my options. Tatiana's voice is getting shrill now. You try living with a mother-in-law who makes it clear every single day that you're not good enough, who criticizes everything you do, who looks at you like you're trash. She scraped off her shoe. I was trying to figure out if I could survive financially if I left this toxic situation. By calculating how much of my son's money you could take with you, I say softly. Not whether you could support yourself, not whether you could make it on your own, but how much you could extract from a marriage you were planning to end. Alistair stands up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor again. He walks to the window, his back to all of us, and I can see his shoulders shaking. He's not crying, not yet, but he's close. My boy who never cried, who held everything inside, who learned from his father to be stoic and strong, is breaking apart in his own dining room. The Instagram posts, Thaddeus continues, and I almost want to stop him, to tell him that's enough, that Alistair doesn't need to hear more. But he does need to hear it. He needs to hear all of it, or he'll spend the rest of his life wondering if there was more, if it could have been saved, if he gave up too easily. Should I discuss those, or what Instagram posts? Alistair asks without turning around. The ones she has scheduled to go live over the next 2 weeks, Thaddeus says. 23 posts and stories, all carefully crafted to paint a picture of emotional abuse and family toxicity. There are photos she's taken covertly of your mother looking stern or disapproving. Screenshots of text messages, taken out of context, of course, that make Mrs. Fairchild appear controlling. Captions already written about escaping toxic family dynamics and choosing yourself over obligation, and the brave journey of leaving a marriage with an enmeshed mama's boy. Each phrase is a knife in my son's back. I watch him absorb them, watch the pain register in the rigid line of his spine. She's been planning this for months, Thaddeus continues, merciless in his thoroughness, building a narrative, creating a paper trail, positioning herself as the victim. The divorce attorney even noted in her consultation summary that Tatiana wanted to know if a significant social media following would help her case, if public sympathy could pressure a more favorable settlement. Stop, Alistair says, his voice hoarse. Just stop. I don't want to hear anymore. But Thaddeus isn't finished. There are also messages between Tatiana and her friends, private messages where she discusses your marriage in rather unflattering terms. I said stop. Alistair spins around, and his face is blotchy and wet now. He is crying, and seeing it breaks something in my chest. I don't want to know what she said to her friends. I don't want to know how she really feels about me. I don't. His voice cracks completely. I don't want to know that my wife thinks I'm boring and stupid and only good for my bank account. I never said you were stupid, Tatiana protests. Baby, those messages, if they even exist, which I doubt, were just me venting. Everyone vents about their spouse to their friends. It doesn't mean anything. You called him your golden ticket, I say, and my voice is quiet, but it cuts through everything else. Your retirement plan. You joked about him being boring but bankable, and not exciting in bed, but exciting in the bank account. You laughed with your friends about playing the long game, about securing the bag, about getting pregnant quickly to lock down child support. The color drains from Alistair's face so completely, I'm afraid he might pass out. You said you wanted to wait to have kids. You said you wanted us to be married a few years first, to travel, to be sure we were ready. I do want to wait, Tatiana says desperately. I'm not trying to get pregnant. I'm on birth control. That message was it was a joke. A stupid joke that came out wrong. When? Alistair asks. When did you send that message? Tatiana doesn't answer. It was sent 4 months ago, Thaddeus supplies. Approximately 2 weeks before Tatiana claimed her birth control pills made her sick and switched to a different method. A method that, according to her gynecologist's records, which we obtained through legal subpoena as part of the investigation, she never actually had administered. You've been lying about birth control? Alistair's voice rises. You've been trying to get pregnant without my knowledge? No, I thought about it, but I didn't actually do it. I'm still on the pill, Tatiana stops, seeming to realize that every word out of her mouth is digging the hole deeper. Why are you listening to them? Why are you taking their word over mine? I'm your wife. And she's my mother, Alistair shouts. The woman who raised me alone for years while my father was building his practice. The woman who worked 18-hour days and still made it to every soccer game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference. The woman who taught me that integrity matters more than money, that honesty is the foundation of every relationship, that you judge people by their actions, not their words. He's breathing hard now, his chest heaving. My mother has never lied to me. Not once in 32 years. She's been overprotective, yes. She's had trouble letting go, yes. But she has never, ever lied to me. He turns to look at Tatiana fully. You've been lying to me since the day we met, haven't you? Tatiana's expression shifts through several emotions before settling on cold calculation. I see the moment she realizes the game is over, that there's no performance that will fix this, no tears that will work, no manipulation that will get her out of this room with anything except her dignity. And even that's questionable. You want to know the truth? She says, her voice dropping to something low and almost conversational. Fine. Here's the truth. Yes, I lied about my background. Because if I'd told you I was Tatiana Kowalski from Cleveland, whose father abandoned her and whose mother cleaned houses for a living, would you have looked at me twice? Would your mother have let me within 100 feet of the precious Fairchild heir? I wouldn't have cared about any of that, Alistair says, and he sounds genuinely confused. My mother grew up in a working-class family in Leeds. She came to this country with nothing. I wouldn't have judged you for... But I would have judged me, Tatiana snaps. I spent my entire life being the poor kid, being the scholarship case, being the one who didn't fit in. And then I discovered Instagram, and I realized I could be anyone I wanted to be. I could wear the right clothes, say the right things, and people would believe I belonged in their world. So yes, I reinvented myself. So what? Everyone lies about who they are online. But you didn't just lie online, I say. You lied to my son. You built an entire false identity and trapped him in a marriage based on fraud. I gave him 2 years of his life. Tatiana's voice is rising again. 2 years where he was happy, where he felt loved, where he got to show off his pretty wife at work functions and charity events. I played the role perfectly, the supportive spouse, the gracious hostess, the future mother of his children. I gave him everything he thought he wanted. Except the truth, Alistair says, and his voice is so heavy with grief that I feel it in my bones. You gave me everything except the truth. The truth? Tatiana laughs, and it's a harsh sound that belongs nowhere near this beautiful room, with its antique furniture and crystal chandelier. You want the truth? Here it is. I married you because you were safe, because you were kind and successful and you'd never hurt me, because I was tired of scraping by, tired of checking my bank account before buying groceries, tired of being one emergency away from homelessness. You offered me security, so I took it. Did you ever love me at all? The question comes out small and broken. Tatiana looks at him for a long moment. I can see her weighing her options, deciding whether one last lie might salvage something. But she must see that it's pointless, because when she answers, it's with brutal honesty. I don't think I know how to love anyone, she says quietly. Not the way you mean it. Not the fairy tale way. I like you fine. I enjoyed our time together. But love? The kind where you'd sacrifice anything, where you'd put someone else first, where you'd grow old together and mean it? She shakes her head. I don't think I'm built for that. I think I'm built for survival. The confession hangs in the air between them, honest and devastating, and somehow more cruel than anything else she could have said. Because it's real. Maybe the first real thing she said all night. Alistair looks at me then, and his eyes are full of a pain I haven't seen since the day we told him his father died. You knew, he whispers. You knew, and you tried to warn me, and I didn't listen. Oh, don't let her play the martyr, Tatiana snaps, turning her venom on me again. She didn't warn you because she cared about your feelings. She investigated me because she's a controlling narcissist who can't stand anyone getting close to her precious son. This isn't about protecting you. It's about winning. And she won. Her smile is bitter. Congratulations, Arabella. You got exactly what you wanted. What I wanted, I say, meeting her eyes, was for my son to be happy. If you genuinely loved him, if you'd been honest, if you'd been building a real partnership, I would have welcomed you into this family with open arms, regardless of where you came from. But you were never interested in joining this family. You were interested in exploiting it. Tatiana grabs her phone from the table, her fingers moving with practiced speed across the screen. The veneer is completely gone now. No more tears, no more wounded wife performance. What's left is someone cornered and desperate, which makes her dangerous in an entirely different way. What are you doing? Alistair asks, his voice flat with exhaustion. What do you think I'm doing? She doesn't even look up from her phone. I'm calling my lawyer. You think you're the only ones who can play hardball? I have rights. I'm entitled to half of everything we've accumulated during this marriage, including this house. The house that my mother bought us as a wedding gift? Alistair's voice carries a note of disbelief. You think you're entitled to half of that? Connecticut is an equitable distribution state, Tatiana says, and I can hear the divorce attorney's coaching in those words. Marital property gets divided fairly, and gifts given to both spouses during marriage are marital property. This house is worth what? $2.3 million? So yeah, I'm entitled to half. Or we can negotiate a settlement where I walk away with less in exchange for keeping quiet about everything I know. There it is, the threat I've been waiting for all night. Thaddeus actually smiles, which is never a good sign for whoever he's dealing with. Are you attempting to blackmail your husband in front of 2 witnesses, one of whom is an attorney? I'm negotiating my fair share of a marriage I'm dissolving, Tatiana corrects, but there's uncertainty creeping into her voice now. She's smart enough to know she just made a mistake, but not smart enough to know how to walk it back. You're threatening to lie about my family publicly unless we pay you off, I say clearly, wanting this on the record in Thaddeus's memory if nowhere else. That's extortion, Tatiana. That's a crime. It's not extortion if I'm just telling my truth. Her voice rises, defensive. I'm not lying about anything. Your family did make my life miserable. You did undermine my marriage. And if I choose to share my experience on my platform, that's my First Amendment right. Your First Amendment right to defame doesn't extend to calculated falsehoods published for financial gain, Thaddeus says, in that mild professor voice he uses when he's explaining why someone is about to lose everything. And given that we have documentation of your planned social media campaign, including the fact that you consulted with your divorce attorney about whether your follower count would increase your settlement, we can establish malicious intent quite easily. Tatiana's phone is still in her hand, but she's frozen now, caught between making the call and recognizing that every move she makes from here is being watched and documented. I want a divorce, Alistair says suddenly, the words dropping into the charged silence like stones into still water. I want you out of my house, out of my life, and I want a divorce filed first thing tomorrow morning. Our house, Tatiana corrects automatically, then seems to realize how petty it sounds. My house, Alistair says firmly. My mother gave it to me with the deed in my name only, as a premarital asset. You have no claim to it whatsoever. He looks at Thaddeus. That's right, isn't it? Completely correct, Thaddeus confirms. Mrs. Fairchild was very careful about how she structured that gift. The deed is solely in your name and predates the marriage. It's not a marital asset. I see Tatiana's face as she realizes that particular pillar of her exit strategy just crumbled. The house was supposed to be her biggest leverage, her guaranteed payout. Without it, she's left with whatever she can squeeze out of the joint bank account and whatever possessions she can claim as gifts. Fine, she says, her voice tight with controlled fury. Then I want half of everything in the joint account, half of the wedding gifts, and I want compensation for 2 years of emotional distress caused by your family's toxic behavior. The joint account currently holds about $47,000, Thaddeus says, consulting his folder. Half of that is $23,500. However, given that you withdrew approximately $115,000 from that account over the past 18 months for gambling and personal expenses without Alistair's knowledge, I'd say you've already taken your half plus his. Those were joint funds. You had every right to transparent use of joint funds, Thaddeus interrupts. You did not have the right to secretly drain the account while lying about the expenses. That's called financial infidelity, and in Connecticut divorce proceedings, it's grounds for a disproportionate settlement in favor of the wronged spouse. I watch Tatiana's face cycle through expressions as she does the math. She came into this marriage with nothing, has spent 18 months bleeding my son's accounts dry, and is about to walk away with even less than nothing because she still has $180,000 in debts that are solely in her name. You planned this, she says, looking at me with undisguised hatred. This whole dinner, this confrontation, this fucking ambush. You planned all of it. You manipulated everything to make sure I'd walk away with nothing. I documented your fraud, I correct her. There's a difference. If you'd been an honest person who genuinely loved my son, there would have been nothing to document. I could destroy you, Tatiana says, and there's something almost admiring in her voice, like she's recognizing a worthy opponent. One viral post, one tearful video about the monster mother-in-law who had me investigated and harassed, who violated my privacy and destroyed my marriage. I could turn public opinion against you so fast your head would spin. You think your precious reputation could survive that? Go ahead, I say calmly, and I mean it. Post whatever you want. Tell whatever story makes you feel better about yourself. But know that we'll respond with every piece of documentation we have. Every bank statement, every message to your friends, every consultation with your divorce attorney. We'll show the world exactly who you are and what you did. That's private information. You can't just... It becomes public information when you make public accusations, Thaddeus says. The truth is an absolute defense against defamation. If you want to start a war in the court of public opinion, you should know that we have better ammunition. Tatiana looks between the three of us, me standing calm and composed by the table, Thaddeus with his folder of damning evidence, and Alistair with his face full of grief and betrayal. I can see her calculating one more time, looking for an angle, a leverage point, anything that might turn this situation in her favor. She finds nothing. I'll be back tomorrow with a moving truck, she says finally, her voice drained of all the performance and pretense. I'll take my personal belongings and the gifts that were given specifically to me. You can keep everything else. You'll take your personal belongings and nothing else, Thaddeus corrects. The gifts were given to both of you as a couple. They remain with the house and with Alistair. Fine, whatever. I don't want your fucking crystal and china anyway. She grabs her purse from the sideboard, the Prada bag I now know is a convincing fake, and heads for the door. Tatiana, Alistair says, and she stops without turning around. What? I hope you figure out who you want to be, he says quietly. Not who you think you need to be to survive. Not who you think people want you to be. Just who you actually are. Because whoever that person is, she deserves better than what you've been doing to yourself. For the first time all night, Tatiana looks genuinely affected. Her shoulders tighten, and I see her hand grip the doorframe hard enough that her knuckles go white. For a moment, I think she might turn around, might say something real, might acknowledge the fundamental decency in my son that she never deserved. Instead, she walks out. The door closes behind her with a quiet click that somehow sounds more final than any slam could have. The silence after Tatiana leaves is deafening. The three of us stand in the dining room like survivors of some natural disaster, surveying the wreckage. The ruined Wellington still sits on the table, my plate with its trail of saliva catching the light from the chandelier. The wine glasses are half empty, the candles burned down to stubs. It looks like the aftermath of a battle, which I suppose it was. Alistair moves first. He walks to the sideboard and pours himself 3 fingers of his father's scotch, the 18-year-old Macallan that Richard saved for important occasions. His hand shakes slightly as he lifts the glass to his lips and drains half of it in one swallow. "Alistair," I start, but he holds up his hand. "Don't," he says, his voice rough. "Just don't, Mom." "Not yet." So I don't. I stand there and watch my son drink scotch at 9:30 on a Tuesday night while his marriage dissolves around him like sugar in rain. Thaddeus quietly gathers his documents, organizing them back into his briefcase with the methodical care of someone giving people space to process. After what feels like an eternity, but is probably only 2 minutes, Alistair speaks again. "How long have you known? The truth about everything, not just suspicions. When did you know for certain?" "About 6 weeks ago," I tell him honestly. "That's when Thaddeus got the bank records and the messages. Before that, it was just intuition and small inconsistencies that didn't add up." "6 weeks." He laughs, but there's no humor in it. "6 weeks you've been sitting on this information, watching me play the happy husband, defending her to you, and you didn't say anything. Would you have believed me if I had?" I ask gently. "If I'd come to you 6 weeks ago with printouts and accusations, what would you have done?" He's quiet for a long moment, staring into his scotch like it holds answers. "I would have thought you were making it up," he admits finally. "I would have thought you hired someone to create fake evidence because you couldn't stand that I got married. I would have believed her over you, and I would have cut you out of my life completely." "I know," I say softly. "That's why I waited. I needed her to show you herself, who she really was. I needed you to see it with your own eyes, not take my word for it. That dinner," he says, turning to look at me now. "You knew she'd do something tonight. You planned for her to act out. That's why you invited Thaddeus. That's why you chose Dad's memorial dinner. You were setting a trap. I was creating an opportunity for the truth," I correct, though we both know he's essentially right. "Your father's memorial dinner was important to me, genuinely important. But yes, I knew Tatiana would resent the attention being on me and Richard instead of on her. I knew she'd been escalating over the past few weeks as her debts got worse and her creditors got more aggressive. And I knew that if I could just get her angry enough, frustrated enough, she'd slip. She'd show you something real instead of the performance she's been giving for 2 years. The spit," he says, his face twisting with disgust. "She actually spat in your food. What kind of person does that?" "A desperate one," Thaddeus offers, closing his briefcase with 2 soft clicks. "The gambling debts we documented are only part of the picture, Alistair. Tatiana has been getting calls and messages from collection agencies and less savory creditors for the past 3 weeks. One of her offshore betting accounts is connected to people who don't take 'I'll pay you later' as an acceptable answer. She was under tremendous pressure, and people under pressure make mistakes." Alistair drains the rest of his scotch and immediately pours more. I want to tell him to slow down, that drinking won't help, but I also remember the night Richard died and how I sat alone in our bedroom with a bottle of wine and drank until I couldn't feel anything anymore. Sometimes you need the numbness before you can face the pain. "I loved her," he says, and his voice breaks on the word loved. "I really, genuinely loved her. I thought she was the one, Mom. I thought we were going to have kids and grow old together and—" He stops, pressing his palm against his eyes. "God, I'm such an idiot." "You're not an idiot," I say firmly, moving closer to him. "You're someone who loved with an open heart. That's never stupid, Alistair. That's brave. It's stupid when you love someone who never loved you back." He slams the glass down on the sideboard hard enough that I'm surprised it doesn't shatter. 2 years, Mom. 2 years of my life, 2 years of making plans and building a future with someone who was just counting days until she could cash out. How am I supposed to come back from that? How am I supposed to trust anyone ever again? The same way I came back after your father died, I tell him. And my voice is steady, even though my heart is breaking for him. One day at a time, one moment at a time, by remembering that one person's betrayal doesn't define everyone else's character. Dad didn't betray you, Alistair points out. Dad loved you until his last breath. That's completely different. You're right, I acknowledge. But I still had to learn how to live in a world where the person I counted on most was suddenly gone. You have to learn how to live in a world where the person you thought you knew never actually existed. Different kinds of loss, same fundamental process of rebuilding. Alistair leans against the sideboard, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He looks exhausted, not just physically tired, but soul-deep weary. The worst part isn't even the lying, he says quietly. It's knowing that every moment we had together was fake. Every time she said she loved me, every time she laughed at my jokes, every time we made plans for the future, all of it was performance. None of it was real. Some of it might have been real, I offer, though I'm not sure I believe it myself. People are complicated. She might have had genuine moments of affection, even if the overall relationship was built on deception. Don't, Alistair says sharply. Don't try to make me feel better by suggesting she cared even a little bit. You heard what she said. She married me because I was safe and successful. She literally called me boring. She told her friends I wasn't exciting in bed. She doesn't get partial credit for occasionally tolerating my company. He's right, of course. I was trying to soften the blow, but there's no softening this. The woman he married never loved him. That's the truth. And any attempt to cushion it is just another form of lying. Thaddeus, who's been standing quietly by the window, finally speaks up. For what it's worth, Alistair, you handled that with remarkable grace. A lot of men in your position would have gotten violent or said things they'd regret. You maintained your dignity even when she was trying to destroy it. I'm my father's son, Alistair says simply. Dad taught me that you measure a man by how he handles himself when everything's falling apart. I'd like to think he'd be proud of how I handled tonight, even if he'd be disappointed in how I got here in the first place. Your father would be incredibly proud, I say, and I have to blink back tears because Richard should be here for this. Richard should be here to hold our son through this devastation, to offer the kind of man-to-man wisdom that I can't provide. You made a mistake trusting the wrong person. That doesn't define you. How you move forward from here, that's what defines you. Alistair nods slowly, processing this. Then he looks at me with eyes that are red-rimmed but dry. I owe you an apology. Actually, I owe you about 100 apologies. For taking her side over yours. For canceling our lunches. For telling you that you were being controlling and intrusive when you were just trying to protect me. For shouting at you tonight. For telling you to leave your own gift to me. For not trusting your instincts when you've never once steered me wrong. You don't owe me any apologies, I start, but he cuts me off. Yes, I do. You're my mother. You've sacrificed everything for me since the day I was born. You worked 18-hour days so I could go to private school. You paid for my college without blinking. You bought me this house as a wedding present even though you had concerns about Tatiana. And I repaid all of that by choosing a woman I'd known for 18 months over the woman who's known me my entire life. His voice cracks. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so incredibly sorry. I close the distance between us and pull him into my arms the way I haven't done since he was a child. He's taller than me now, broader, but he folds into my embrace like he's 8 years old again, and the world is too big and scary. I feel him shaking, feel the tears he's been holding back finally start to fall, and I hold him tighter. It's okay, I whisper into his hair. You're okay. We're okay. I should have listened to you, he says against my shoulder, his voice muffled. You tried to warn me. All those little comments I thought were passive-aggressive. You were trying to make me see what she was, without directly attacking her. And I was too stubborn and too in love to hear it. You were trying to be a good husband, I tell him, pulling back so I can look at his face. You were trying to defend your wife and your marriage. Those are admirable instincts, Alistair. They just happen to be directed at the wrong person. He wipes his face with the back of his hand, looking young and lost. What do I do now? Practically speaking, what are the next steps? Thaddeus steps forward, back into attorney mode. Tonight, you sleep. Tomorrow, you come to my office and we file for divorce, citing fraud and financial infidelity. Connecticut allows for fault-based divorce, and we have more than enough evidence to prove both. Given the circumstances, you'll likely receive a favorable settlement, which in this case means she'll receive nothing, and you'll be free of the marriage with all your assets intact. What about her debts? Alistair asks. The $180,000. Am I responsible for any of that? None of it, Thaddeus assures him. The gambling debts were incurred in her name only. The credit cards were personal accounts, not joint. The personal loans were taken out by her with her signature alone. You have no legal responsibility for any of it. So she's just going to declare bankruptcy or something? Most likely, Thaddeus says. Or she'll try to negotiate with her creditors. Either way, it's her problem, not yours. Your only obligation is to move forward with the divorce as quickly and cleanly as possible. Alistair nods, absorbing this information. Then he looks around the dining room, at the ruined dinner, the scattered documents, the evidence of his collapsed marriage, and something shifts in his expression. The devastation is still there, but underneath it, I see something else emerging. Resolution, maybe, or just the stubborn Fairchild determination to survive. I can't stay here tonight, he says suddenly. I can't sleep in that bed, in this house, with her ghost everywhere. Can I stay with you, Mom? Just for tonight? You can stay with me for as long as you need, I tell him immediately. Your old room is exactly as you left it. We'll pick up some of your things now, and tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. He nods gratefully, then turns to Thaddeus. Thank you. For everything. For investigating. For being here tonight. For having my back when I didn't even know I needed it. I promised your father I'd look after both of you, Thaddeus says simply. He made me swear it the night before he died, when he knew the heart attack was more serious than the doctors were saying. This is just me keeping that promise. The mention of Richard breaks something loose in me. My husband, who loved our son more than anything in the world, who would have moved heaven and earth to protect him from this kind of pain. Richard knew he was dying, and his last conscious thoughts were about making sure Alistair and I would be taken care of. And here we are, 3 years later, doing exactly what he asked. He'd be proud of all of us, I say, my voice thick with emotion. He'd be proud that we handled this with integrity, that we didn't sink to her level. He'd probably also say something about how this is why you always trust your mother's instincts, Alistair adds with a watery smile. Dad was big on that. Your mother knows things, he'd tell me. Don't ask me how, she just knows. Listen to her. He was a wise man, I agree, and he raised a wise son, one who made a mistake, but who's going to learn from it and come out stronger. We spend the next 20 minutes moving through the house, gathering things Alistair will need for the next few days. Clothes, toiletries, his laptop for work. Every room holds memories now tainted by betrayal. The bedroom where he shared a bed with a woman who never loved him. The home office where they planned a future that was never real. The kitchen where they cooked meals while she was secretly draining his bank account. But houses are just structures. They can be reclaimed, repurposed, filled with new memories that overwrite the old ones. Or he can sell it and start fresh somewhere else. The important thing is that he has options now, has freedom now, has the truth now. As we're about to leave, Alistair stops at the front door and looks back at the house. 2 years, he says quietly. 2 years of my life. I can never get back. 2 years of loving someone who was using me. How do I make peace with that? You don't, I tell him honestly. Not tonight. Maybe not for a long time. But eventually, you'll look back and realize that those 2 years taught you something important about yourself, about your capacity to love, about your values, about what you really want in a partner. And you'll use those lessons to build something real with someone who deserves you. You really believe that? He sounds skeptical. I know it, I say firmly. Because you're Richard Fairchild's son and Arabella Fairchild's son, and we don't stay down. We get back up. We dust ourselves off, we learn, and we become stronger than we were before. He manages a small, genuine smile, the first one I've seen all night. When did you get so wise? Around the same time I realized my son was worth fighting for, I tell him, squeezing his hand. Come on, let's go home. 3 months have passed since that terrible dinner, and I'm standing in my kitchen making lemon bars while Alistair sits at the island, reading through architectural plans spread across the marble countertop. It's a Saturday morning in early March, and pale sunlight streams through the windows, catching dust motes in the air and making everything feel softer, gentler, like the world is slowly healing. My son looks different now, healthier. The dark circles under his eyes have faded, replaced by the clear-eyed focus I remember from before Tatiana. He's gained back the weight he lost during those final months of the marriage, when stress and anxiety killed his appetite and he survived on coffee and takeout. His laugh, when it comes, sounds genuine again instead of forced. He's been living with me for the past 12 weeks, and I won't lie, having him here has been both wonderful and heartbreaking. Wonderful because I get to see him every day, because we've fallen back into the easy rhythm we had before his marriage, because my house feels alive again instead of like a mausoleum to my dead husband. Heartbreaking because I see the moments when grief hits him unexpectedly, when a song comes on the radio that reminds him of her, when he passes a restaurant they used to go to, when he has to explain to colleagues and friends that he's getting divorced. The divorce itself was finalized 2 weeks ago. Thaddeus handled it with surgical precision, presenting such overwhelming evidence of fraud and financial infidelity that Tatiana's attorney advised her to accept the settlement without contest. She walked away with nothing. No money, no property, no spousal support. Just her personal belongings and the debts that were always hers to begin with. "Mom, what do you think about this configuration?" Alistair turns his laptop toward me, showing a 3D rendering of what looks like a modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows and clean lines. "It's for the Morrison Project, the couple who want the sustainable home in Westport." I wipe flour from my hands and lean over to look. The design is beautiful, elegant but warm, sophisticated but livable. Classic Alistair. "It's gorgeous, very you." "That's what I was afraid of," he says with a slight smile. "I don't want all my designs to look the same. I need to push myself more, try new things." "There's a difference between having a signature style and being repetitive," I tell him, returning to cutting the lemon bars into perfect squares. "You have a gift for creating spaces that feel both modern and timeless. That's not a weakness. That's your strength." He nods thoughtfully, making notes on the plans. This is what our days look like now. Comfortable domesticity, easy conversation. The kind of relationship we had before Tatiana drove a wedge between us. Some people might think it's unhealthy, a 32-year-old man living with his mother. But I think it's exactly what he needs right now. Time to heal, space to breathe, the security of unconditional love while he figures out who he is outside of that marriage. "I'm thinking about selling the house," he says suddenly, not looking up from his plans. "The Greenwich house. Too many bad memories. Every room reminds me of her, of how stupid I was." "You weren't stupid," I say automatically, because we've had this conversation at least 20 times in the past 3 months. "You were trusting. There's a difference. Stupidly trusting," he amends. "But yeah, I think I want to sell it. Start fresh somewhere new. Maybe get a condo in the city, closer to work. Something that's just mine, that she never touched." "I think that's a healthy decision," I tell him honestly. "And the market's strong right now. You'll get a good price." He's quiet for a moment, then asks the question I've been waiting for him to ask for weeks. "Have you heard anything about her? About what she's doing?" I have heard things. It's impossible not to, given that Thaddeus has been monitoring her social media and public activities to ensure she doesn't violate the non-disparagement clause in the divorce settlement. But I'm not sure Alistair really wants to know. "Are you sure you want to hear this?" I ask gently. "I think I need to," he says. "Not because I still care about her, but because I need to know that she's not out there destroying someone else's life the way she destroyed mine." "Fair enough." I dry my hands on a towel and sit down across from him at the island. "She declared bankruptcy 6 weeks ago. Her Instagram account is gone. Deleted or banned, Thaddeus isn't sure which. She moved back to Ohio, to her mother's house in Cleveland. She's working at a dental office as a receptionist." Alistair absorbs this information without visible emotion. "So she lost everything, too. She lost the life she was trying to build on lies," I correct. "Maybe now she'll have a chance to build something real, something honest." "Do you really believe that? That people like her can change?" It's a good question, one I've thought about a lot over the past 3 months. I believe people can change if they want to badly enough, and if they're willing to do the hard work. But I also believe that most people don't actually want to change. They just want the consequences of their actions to go away. Tatiana strikes me as someone who'll be angry about getting caught, not remorseful about what she did. Yeah, Alistair agrees quietly. That sounds right. We sit in companionable silence for a moment, and then he says something that makes my heart swell with pride. I'm thinking about going to therapy, not because I'm falling apart or anything, but because I want to understand why I missed all the red flags, why I was so easy to manipulate. I don't want to make the same mistakes again. I think that's incredibly mature, I tell him. And for what it's worth, you weren't easy to manipulate. You were someone who loved honestly and assumed other people did the same. That's not a character flaw that needs fixing. That's a beautiful quality that needs protecting. Maybe, he says, but I also need to learn how to protect it better. How to trust my instincts instead of ignoring them because I want someone to be who I think they are rather than who they actually are. He's learning, growing, becoming someone even stronger than he was before. Richard would be so proud. The doorbell rings, and Alistair goes to answer it while I plate the lemon bars. I hear voices in the foyer, his and a woman's, and for a moment my stomach clenches with irrational fear. But then I hear him laugh, genuinely and warmly, and I relax. He comes back into the kitchen, followed by a woman I don't recognize. She's probably in her early 30s, with dark curly hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater and no makeup. She's carrying a messenger bag and looks slightly nervous. "Mom, this is Rebecca Chen," Alistair says, and there's something in his voice I haven't heard in months. Lightness. She's the structural engineer on the Morrison project. "Rebecca, this is my mother, Arabella Fairchild." "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Fairchild," Rebecca says, shaking my hand with a firm grip. "Alistair talks about you constantly." "In a good way," she adds quickly. "He says you're the smartest person he knows." "He's biased," I say warmly, already liking her. There's something genuine about her, something unpretentious and real. "Can I offer you some lemon bars, fresh out of the oven?" "I'd love some," Rebecca says, and she and Alistair settle at the island while I serve them. They dive into discussion about load-bearing walls and sustainable materials, and I watch my son's face as he talks to her. He's animated, engaged, fully present in a way he hasn't been since before the marriage. I don't know if Rebecca is someone special or just a colleague and friend. And honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that Alistair is healing. He's finding his way back to himself. He's learning that not everyone is Tatiana, that there are still honest people in the world worth knowing, worth trusting, worth letting into his life. As I watch them work together, heads bent over the architectural plans, I think about that terrible night 3 months ago. The spit in my food, my son's anguished face, Tatiana's mask falling away to reveal the calculating stranger underneath, Thaddeus arriving with his briefcase of truth. The moment everything shattered and then, slowly, began to rebuild. It was awful. It was necessary. And we survived it. Richard used to say that you measure people not by how they handle success, but by how they handle failure. By that metric, Alistair is proving himself to be exactly the man his father hoped he'd become. Strong, resilient, capable of learning from pain without letting it destroy him. And me? I'm just a mother who loves her son enough to wait, to plan, to fight, and then to step back and let him heal at his own pace. Some people might think I was manipulative, that I orchestrated that confrontation too carefully, that I should have told Alistair the truth sooner. Maybe they're right, but I'd do it all again exactly the same way, because my son is free now, free from lies, free from exploitation, free to build a life based on truth instead of performance. The lemon bars are perfect, tart and sweet, and exactly the way Richard loved them. I serve them with coffee, and we sit together in my sun-filled kitchen on a Saturday morning in March, talking about architecture and engineering and the future. And for the first time in 2 years, the future feels like something worth looking forward to. Outside my window, crocuses are pushing through the last of the snow. Spring is coming. New growth, new beginnings. We're going to be okay. We already are.